This podcast is part of the Batman Universe Podcast Network, hosted by the BatmanUniverse.net. Check out everything related to Batman and the entire Bat family at the BatmanUniverse.net, including news and original content related to comics, movies, television, merchandise, video games, and more. Also, check out some of the other unique podcasts that TBU has to offer. Consider supporting this podcast by becoming a patron on Patreon. Even $1 can go a long way in supporting this content that you enjoy. Look for a link over at thebatmanuniverse.net to offer your support now. And now, on with the show.
I'm back, baby! I'm back!
The boys are back in town!
Why isn't anyone ever just whelmed?
Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 11 of Everyone Loves Young Justice podcast. I'm Rob.
And I'm Jay.
This podcast is brought to you and hosted by the BatmanUniverse.net, your home for all things Batman and the surrounding universe. You can find us on social media at ELYJ Podcast on Twitter, and we are on Facebook at that's a lot of W's tonight, Rob, at facebook.com/ELYJpod. You can email into the show at ELYJpodcast.com. And if you listen to the show and you especially listen on iTunes, you can leave a review and that'll help spread the word of the show. And we will read your reviews on the show. And I'm promising we will get to some more of those later. Like I said, I'm Rob and we got Jay here. It's been a minute. I feel like we've kind of gone almost like a comic book. We've gone monthly. I know as we're getting into the latter part of the year, things start getting crazy. My October is like the birth month for my family. We just had a big, huge Myers October birthday. It was like my dad, my grandmother, my sister, uncle, 3 cousins. So every year we have this big October birthday. And I think we're going to try and record one other time. And I got to see Hugh Jackman in concert, which was really cool. And we had set that up. I'm like, yeah, I'll be able to do Sunday. And I was like, Jay, I'm tired. I think that's just been the theme of the show for a while. So those are the things. Yeah.
Yeah, the Jackman will take a lot out of you because he is so talented and so very handsome. So it's completely understandable.
You want to talk about the guy. It's one thing to be like, oh, wow, that guy's a really good actor. Oh, and he can sing. Oh, and he can dance. Oh, and he can play the drums. And darn it, he's just a really nice guy. And, you know, and he's been married to the same woman for 26 years. Mm-hmm. And she's beautiful as well. And, you know, he's got this whole arena full of women oohing and awing over him, and all the guys are like, show me Wolverine. And then he does the Wolverine thing, and you're like, darn it, he made that look cool. That was a really cool experience.
Yeah, I'll bet.
And I'd be lying if I said that was more for my wife than me, but I think I enjoyed it as equally as much as she did.
It was an even trade there.
Yeah, even trade.
Yeah.
We might have high-fived each other a couple times during the show.
It's our surprise to each other.
Right. How has your fall been? I don't know what fall is like for you in the South, but, you know, for us here, up in the northern states, it's like, oh, it's 70 one day, and then it drops down to like 51, and then gets up to 70 again. So like sinuses are just going crazy here. I don't know if you guys get a little bit more milder temperature than what we do.
Oh no, it was still summer up until like 6 hours ago when it started getting cold. It's actually been kind of rainy and chilly the past couple of days, but it has been in the 70s and 80s pretty consistently for the past 2 months. And I'm pretty sure it was the hottest and longest heat streak or whatever, heat pattern that we'd seen in a long, long time. So, I mean, it was,
wow.
Yeah, it was hot. It was dry. It seriously just did not start even feeling remotely like fall up until like yesterday when it got down to like 40 or something in the morning, but then it creeped back up to 70 something in the afternoon. So thankfully my sinuses haven't been killing me too much, but it'll happen pretty soon. A lot of the mountain cedar that kind of blows up this way from the south, that usually hits me from about January to March. And if I'm not sneezing, I'm wiping my nose from having sneezed just before. And then I'll start sneezing again. And it's awful. But enough about my weird temperament to the temperatures. It's been okay. Been kind of busy working on a lot of other, comic-y stuff for, my own site with some Batman news stuff. Just put out a review, just for a little plug. A publisher called Insight Editions. They do a lot of... man. Yeah, I think I know
exactly what you're going to say.
Oh my gosh, this Batman, the definitive history of the Dark Knight book. It is absolutely incredible. I wrote a review for it and posted it this morning. And if you pay attention to the Batman News social media feeds, we're going to have some copies that we're going to give away as a kind of a little sweepstakes there. So, a little plug for that. But I mean, it's a $75 book. But it is worth every penny of that $75. It is thorough. It's really fun to read. It's there's not a lot of editorializing from the writers, the authors of the book, to where they say, well, this was awful and we hated this and this was amazing, we love this. I mean, they generally keep the editorializing positive. Cool. But even when they get to Batman and Robin, or, the reactions to, Batman vs. Superman and Justice League, how those were not what they expected. They keep a very diplomatic approach, more to just talking about, the fact that this is still a part of Batman's history. And then they just go into other stuff that we love, like the animated series and, other great comics and stuff like that. So it's really good. And I won't spoil anything about what they actually are, but the book has a bunch of inserts on different pages that almost make the book worth it again, because there's just so much cool bonus material included with the quote unquote the story that they're telling with Batman's history, just as maybe like a teeny tiny little hint of what it is. Because again, I mean, I had no idea any of this stuff was going to be in there, and my eyes became like saucers when I opened it and got to a page where I saw a few pages of an original script from a comic book with like the rough layouts that the artist had done, and then some notes that the writer had put in there for how the scene was going to flow, and then some storyboards from a cartoon. And I mean, it's a bunch of really cool stuff like that I didn't even expect to see, but was really glad, and made it all the easier to recommend this book. So definitely go pick it up, or ask for it for Christmas.
Santa Claus, I've been really, really good.
Yes, we've all been really good.
I've been $75 good.
Exactly. And the thing, I looked on the Amazon page for it to get the dimensions for it. And they pulled some of the copy that I wrote for a post that I did to say that it's critically acclaimed. And then they put in some of the verbiage I used on one of the posts. So it's like, hey, I'm an acclaimed critic. And
nice.
I know that that's not what they mean by critically acclaimed, but I'm going to take it that way. But no,
that's how I read it, sir.
Yes, exactly. The book is like over like 19 inches, in length, and it's over 7 pounds. It is massive.
So if this was an episode of Seinfeld, this would have been a book that Kramer would have said, it's a coffee. This is literally a coffee table book and almost could be literally a coffee table.
Yes, if they put those little fold-out legs that he proposed, it could be a coffee table, a bat coffee table by itself.
That'd be awesome. Yeah, that book looks great.
Yeah, it's I can't say enough about how awesome it is. I was really pleased with it.
Well, speaking of books, we're going to travel to 2019, present day. It's been a little bit since issue 8 and issue 9 have come out, respectively. 2 months, technically 3, if you want to count it that way. Written by Brian Michael Bendis. And before we get into spoilers, if you've listened to the 100th episode of Everyone Loves the Drake, and I think even episode 9 of this show, we were talking about Tim Drake's costume and name and all that stuff. So we'll dig into through the weeds in this book. So with that note, folks, come back on the other side. Jay and I are going to take a look at Young Justice issue number 8, and we will get some Drake talk up in this thing. What is this, a rap show? We'll be right back in just a moment, folks. Don't go anywhere.
I don't know. Modern day comics just don't seem to have the magic the older ones did. I wish I could go back to those days. What the? Wait, you're me. But I'm me. How is this possible? I'm you, from the future. What happens to my voice? Oh, well, actually, I kind of was eating peanuts before I came back, and one of them went down the wrong tube. I'm still trying to get it out, actually. Nothing. Well, still, the future must be terrible. I mean, your hair's half burnt off. Oh, well, actually, I tripped and fell over the stove. What about the scar on your face? It's a paper cut. And the eye patch? I was looking through a telescope and accidentally pointed at the sun. Look, I have a reason for being here. I built a time machine so you can go back to the past and check out the comics of yesteryear. I figure you'll either enjoy the good old days or you'll gain an appreciation for the current comics. Maybe both. Can I bring some friends with me? Sure, but only one at a time. Well, there you have it. Join me, Mike Staley, and an assortment of co-hosts as we look over the world of DC Comics from half a century ago in my new monthly podcast, DC 50 Years Ago. Who are you talking to? Don't worry about it. Just check out DC 50 Years Ago on iTunes or Apple Podcasts, whatever it's called, and at dc50yearsago.podomatic.com. Seriously, who are you talking to?
Justice League International, Bwahaha Podcast, a new monthly show chronicling the adventures of the JLI era by Keith Giffen and J.M. DeMatteis. We'll be going issue by issue in release order, tackling the core Justice League title, Justice League Europe, and the quarterly book. Along the way, we'll take time out for special episodes covering various spin-offs, cartoon appearances, the infamous TV pilot, and much more. So join me in an ever-changing roster of guest hosts as we celebrate your favorite JLI members, such as
Martian Manhunter,
Batman,
Dr. Fate,
Black Canary,
Fire,
Ice,
Maxwell Lord,
Oberon,
Captain Marvel,
Rocket Red,
Captain Atom,
Mr. Miracle,
Guy Gardner,
Booster Gold,
Blue Beetle,
Nort,
and many, many more. Justice League International, Bwahaha Podcast, part of the Fire and Water Podcast Network. Want to make something of it?
Recognize Robin B20.
Okay, Young Justice number 8. Can Young Justice escape the evils of Earth 3? A very cool cover here by John Timms, who by this point is now the main penciler on the book, off and on here. I mean, for the most part, now that Gleason, at the time that this is recording, was at issue 3 of his Spider-Man, has officially hit the newsstands. So it was really interesting to see him hold a Marvel comic for the first time in a very long time, and it be Spider-Man, and go, wow, that's weird to see that when we started this show, he was very much the lead penciler on this book and had just come off a very successful DC Comics Rebirth run with he and Pete Tomasi, or not Pete Tomasi.
Peter Tomasi,
Yeah, Peter Tomasi. I'm getting those mixed up because he and Bendis were together for a little bit. Yeah. But yeah, he and Tomasi, the Superman run is just, that was something, like you said in the beginning.
For a second there, you caught me off guard. I was like, did he do a book with somebody else? And I totally forgot.
Yeah. No. He just changed capes. They went from a dark cape to a very bright red cape.
Yes.
But I love that Superman run. And then, Jurgens.
So good. I would just think about that era, sometimes, like, there was a good 2 or 3 years where every week we were getting a great Superman book. Mm-hmm. Because if Superman wasn't out, then Action Comics was out that week. And if Action Comics wasn't out that week, Superman was out. And they were both written by great writers and had great artists on them. And, I mean, they were just phenomenal Superman stories. So, yeah, I mean, to your point, yes, that was a great little stretch there for Superman fans and those of us who have become bigger Superman fans over the past couple of years, like myself, and that definitely helped.
Oh yeah, it did for me too. And a little segue here, if we could shift gears from the bright and glistening metropolis city that Superman resides in and go to Gotham City. Our friends would like to be in some seedy alley in Gotham City on Earth Prime, but they're stuck on Earth 3, and this was interesting that they went to Earth 3, that the crime syndicate from Earth 3 is effectively the same crime syndicate that was in the Forever Evil storyline. So we kind of play into that, but this front cover by John Timms, I really like this one. It almost has a Die Hard-ish or a Back to the Future 2-ish, tower off to the one side. But you got the whole group holding on to Superboy of Robin, Teen Lantern, Wonder Girl, Impulse, Jenny Hex, and Amethyst, all holding onto Superboy to try and at least maybe escape the cover or escape Earth 3. But this is a fun cover. I like things like this. I think some of the covers recently have been a little off, but this one kind of feels like it gets back to form of what a cover should be, where you look at it and go, wow, I don't know really what's going on here, but I like everything that I'm seeing. So what'd you think of issue 8's cover here?
Yeah, I'm a sucker for a good cover blurb, and this is a great cover blurb.
Can Young Justice escape the evils of Earth 3?
Just one of those really over-the-top and, bombastic, phrases that the action of the characters on the cover, it's going to catch your eye. But then when you actually start reading, what book is this? It's like, well, must be Young Justice. But, can Young Justice escape the evils? That sounds really interesting. Some of the stuff that's going on in the background has nothing to do with anything that goes on in the book. So it does seem like a little kind of filler. There's like a burning building in the one long panel there, and then some evil character shooting laser beams at a fighter jet. But, I mean, it's, even though they're kind of generic, it's kind of generic imagery. It does let you know that, hey, maybe this Earth 3 kind of sucks, and they would want to get escape from it. So, so let's crack this open and see if they can.
Again, the recap page going back, I think it was issue 5 that they started doing the recaps, and I said I'd be fine with them doing the recaps if they give us something other than maybe just the character hero pose, and they kind of do that in this, that they are on Earth 3. You can see Metropolis, and everybody's kind of hunkered down. It looks like maybe there's just snow or just these little, it's probably not snow. It's probably the multiverse, because you can kind of see the rings at the top. Yeah. But it's just a recap of the other 7 issues that have preceded it, about them being, banished from the court, of fighting on Gemworld and Lord Opal. That whole thing's in here. And then the very end of it says the heroes are uncharted multiverse with no way home. They are on their Earth. Are they? So this is Earth 3, and we meet right away. We kind of seen some of the Earth 3 characters already in issue 7, but we meet, and at first I was like, why is Wonder Woman on Earth 3? Amazon Thunder, if I'm saying that correct, which is kind of funny. I'm like, I keep wanting to say Amazon Thunder, but seeing the Earth 3 version of Wonder Girl fighting our Wonder Girl, and Cassie takes a huge pop right in the face here, and it says "Lost in the Multiverse" down in the bottom right-hand corner. And the purple thought I would say thought balloons. I wasn't sure who this was at first. On my first initial read, I think when this issue came out, this was the issue that all of us Drake fans were. You like how I said that? How all us Drake fans were. Way to bury the lead, Rob. Yeah. You guys already know what we're going to talk about. I wasn't paying attention to that, because I think a lot of us, we just kind of were flipping through the book or flipping through our digital copies at first to get to the big moment. So going back through and actually reading the issue as a whole, I didn't, spoilers, you should have read this by now, I didn't think it was going to be Stephanie from Earth 3 that we will find out as Batwoman later on. So for a while reading, and I was trying to figure out who this was, but it was kind of telegraphed because I was kind of reading ahead a little bit. So we can talk about that a little bit, but the fight with the evil Wonder Girl of Earth 3 and what's going on here, the art is just fantastic in here. Just the sense of movement through the first few pages, and Cassie's getting thrown into buildings, bouncing off of signs, and just is really taking a licking from her evil doppelganger. So what do you think about just this opening scene? And I mean, everything I feel like through this issue is going really quick from beat to beat and is really frenzied and chaotic. And I mean that in the best way. I think Bendis does a really good job of telling the story of how crazy all this is, that Jenny Hex and Amethyst don't even get a really good chance to discuss what is going on until they meet someone else. So what do you think of the opening section of this book?
I'll just kind of spoil my thoughts on the whole thing. Visually, I think this issue's great. This opening fight scene, that double page spread where Amazon Thunder punches, Wonder Girl in the face. And then, she gets, and on the next page, Cassie gets knocked into a building, and Amazon Thunder just, keeps going at her and, is kind of hovering there above her to lord her superiority over her. Even over the next couple pages, when she kind of gets her wits about her, Cassie still can't get the upper hand. I mean, it is a great fight scene. It's illustrated really well. I love just the visual storytelling and the progression that John Timms and Gabe Altave, the colorist that they use here.
Oh my gosh, the colors are amazing.
Yes, especially later on. There are some panels and pages later on that are just, even though I don't like the writing that's going on in it, just visually, it is. It would be a great book just to flip through, just to look at. So, I really like this. I like that Amethyst and Jenny Hex are, trying to make sense of everything together, and that they're the ones that are kind of put in our POV, they're trying to suss things out and, make sense of what's going on. So they're kind of given that expository role, and it works. It works just fine. But really, most of the issue is just action beat after action beat after action beat, and I think those work great. Yeah. It's when we get into, some of the other, effectively, Bendis's part of this issue, I wasn't a fan of. Obvious reasons that we've discussed, ad nauseum before, and then for a couple of other things, I just don't think. I think it could have used another draft or two, with a little bit firmer editorial hand on it. But just looking at it, I love this issue pretty much from cover to cover.
I've said this before on I think I've said it on the Drake a couple times and just maybe on BOF on some of my guest spots, that comic books are a visual medium, not that story is second. You can have a really great story, but if the art is really bad and really clunky to look at, it brings down the story considerably. If you can't stand to look at the book, then you're probably not going to want to read the book either. The flip side is true. You can have a really great looking book, and some people, one of my favorites is Hush. That book is gorgeous to look at. I'll even go a step farther. Batman and Robin, the Boy Wonder, is a beautiful book to look at, but to read it, it's a train wreck of epic proportions.
Oh, yes.
Now, I'm not saying, like, some people will say, that it's that way about Hush. Hush is a lot of filler, but my gosh, it's a beautiful book to look at. I think Hush is a little better than what some people think, but still, this is somewhere in the middle of those two. I think it's a beautiful book to look at, and the colors are just amazing, and I still was just kept thumbing through it today. But like you alluded to, there's some parts in the story like another draft, or this is one of those things like, oh, the changes are creeping in different places, why things are starting to feel shoehorned. And some of my friends have said like, oh, this is your first Bendis you're reading. Wait till the Bendis comes. And I feel like maybe some of that is starting to creep in a little bit. We'll get there in a few little bit, but some of the other characters that show up that kind of made me chuckle. Luther L, he is the child of Lex Luthor and the Lois Lane of this universe. Am I saying that correctly?
Yes, he's the son of he's effectively the son of the analog
yes.
Superman, Ultraman, and then Dana
Ultraman,
Luthor.
Yes.
Yeah, Dana Luthor.
Yeah. I'm getting my universes screwed
it's
up
okay.
here.
There's an infinite number of them, so you're bound to just mix them up every now and then.
Yeah, on some universe, I am actually correct.
Yes.
So he breaks up the POV for us momentarily, coming down on Jenny Hex and Amethyst, and then Speed Zone shows up, which this is where some of I think the writing starts to fall a little bit, like, oh, hey, we got a character. Hey, we got a character here where, yeah, we know we're supposed to have some doppelgangers come through. I'm glad the Speed Zone, I don't know what it was about this section, but I didn't care for, as much as I like Impulse, I think some of that is getting lost a little bit in here with the erratic storytelling is the wrong thing I want to say, but it's just almost like the breakneck speed that we're trying to tell the story. And I think, like you said, some more fine tuning could have been done with this issue. Superboy comes in to try and help Cassie and basically help the girls through this section before we get to the bigger thing that we'll talk about in just a moment. So the Speed Zone and the Superboy fight with Luther L and Miss Amazon here. What do you think about this section?
Yeah, I mean, I do agree with kind of the dialogue and the Impulse and Speed Zone section. I mean, a lot of it isn't even so much the dialogue between the two of them. It's the narration, which I think that it is revealed way too late who it was. So because there is a lot of those the narrative boxes.
If you take that out, this would be a quick read.
Oh yeah, totally. But since it's there and you kind of have to read it, it honestly becomes kind of a chore, and it's confusing because you don't know who it's supposed to be. Since it's purple, I thought it was supposed to be Amethyst for the longest time.
Yep.
And I was like, but then some of the stuff that she's talking about, it's like, why is she saying this? How does she know this? Is she dictating this after the fight and everything? It just didn't make sense. And we don't find out who is actually speaking and narrating this until way late in the book. So it just makes it all fall completely flat for me because it wasn't interesting to read anyway. Even going back and reading it again, knowing who it is, it's just not written remarkably well. I do like the gag on the Impulse and Speed Zone page where Speed Zone asks Impulse, "What's your name?" and Bart says, "Stop Short," and he's like, "Stop Short," And then Impulse pulls a Roadrunner, and you find out that they've, run from Metropolis to Delaware. That was kind of a fun little gag there. I mean, other than the some of the visual storytelling of it, I love the crackly lightning all over the page. That's a really good way that it's a very standard way of doing it for a Flash character. But I love that Tim's kind of threw it in there just to give the page a little bit more personality with those two characters. And I mean, again, the staging where Superboy and Luthor L are fighting, and Luthor L gets knocked into the Daily Planet globe, but then Amexon one, and I'm just forgetting their names already. Amexon Thunder. I mean, effectively, you just want to call them Bad Cassie and Bad Connor. Yeah, because they have no personality other than that. Being the bad version of the good guys.
I don't know if you've seen the movie A Scent from a Woman, Al Pacino and Chris O'Donnell.
Yeah.
Where they're at the dinner party of Al Pacino's family, and he keeps getting some family member's name wrong at the party, and I forget who the actor is, says, her name's, Christine, let's say. And he says, I'm sorry, your name's not important enough to remember. I feel that was a long way to say their names aren't important enough to remember. I think there wasn't enough thought put in with that on this part, which I'm kind of like, all right, it's not really about the villains, but it's kind of the underlying issue I have with this issue. But sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you there.
No. I mean, it's valid points and everything, and I totally agree. It's almost like Bendis was banking on a lot of the, goodwill that he had garnered from returning a lot of these characters to, a little bit more fun and lighthearted versions that we prefer over the, gloomy and tortured and kind of depressed characters that they'd turned into over the years. It's almost like he went a little too far in that direction with just irreverence and, almost goofiness, and it just didn't work. It's just like, well, these are completely disposable characters, so why should I care about any of them?
Mm-hmm. And I don't normally say this about these, but the onomatopoeias in here, I really like how they're framed. Mm-hmm. The smacks, the cracks, the booms are written and colored beautifully. Even the boom when Superboy knocks Luthor L and I keep calling her Miss Amazon. Evil Cassie. Yeah. Evil Thunder. The boom behind them looks really cool, the way it's set back almost like a surprint. So
definitely. I love when Superboy first appears and he knocks Luthor L out, and there's a kapow, but it's kind of curved like the trajectory of his punch. That's just really creative. I think it was Wes Abbott was the letterer. Yeah, Wes Abbott.
Yes.
So that's just really cool. We like to call out good lettering when we see it, because a lot of times good lettering you don't notice because it's doing its job and it's not supposed to call itself out. But when they're allowed to show off a little bit and have a lot of fun, that's definitely really fun, especially with sound effects and big fight scenes.
Mm-hmm. And the fight, we've already kind of talked about this. I think we both said it nauseam. We've been online a lot about it, but it is the Robin and Drake fight. I think again, coloring is great. The 9-panel grid where it's just in silhouettes and yellows and bow staffs and flips and kicks, I think it's done very well.
They went 3 more. It's a 12-panel grid.
Oh, it's 12. Yeah, that's what. Jeez, I can't count past 3. It's done very well, and then the talking point that we've had before. So I won't belabor it too much. We've already got into it, but hey, every podcast could be somebody's first podcast. Yeah. We get the mention of the Drake. This is Tim's evil doppelganger, and he goes by the Drake. So I didn't realize at the time when we first did our initial reaction that we actually get to see what the D logo looks like here. It almost looks like a crescent moon.
Almost looks like the Red Robin, like hooded logo that he would have. just offset to where it's going off the side of the emblem.
Yeah, that doesn't bother me so much. I think one of the bright spots in the costume that we will eventually get, in some of the stuff now, you can tell that you can see the logo. Instead of it being yellow, it looks like the logo is going to be red. So I guess that's where they're pulling some of the Robin colors in it. We can talk about that costume we've seen in there. But at least we know that Tim does have some type of a logo. I love the way he draws Tim and even Drake in this section, and just how evil and twisted this version of himself is, where he's like, rubber bullets, honest, before Bart can fly down and save him. And again, we had talked about how this is where Tim is getting his name from. The sequence, I think, works well for what it is. The almost splash page, I don't know where this is numbered, where Tim ends up throwing the guy through like the
like a convenience store or whatever.
Convenience store or whatever. That shot there is just beautiful.
Yes.
The composition of Tim's body, the way he's throwing him, even just the moon up in the sky, just a beautiful, beautiful set of panels here. Even just the panel right before Tim throws, where he's got the batarang up over his head, where his face is kind of in shadow. I love that. And even the panel right next to it with his cape up over the side of his face, just gorgeous. This page right here is my single favorite page out of the book. I think it's just done beautifully. I haven't said it much on this show, but if this was a poster of Tim, I would hang this one on my wall. I love this section. So since we had last talked before about Tim's name change coming up to when he officially calls himself Drake, because right now it's just Bart and everybody else wanting to bark at him about it. I think now that we're a couple months removed from it, I've settled on, I don't hate it. I'm still not somebody that's, posting stuff on Twitter and, this is horrible, this is stupid. I'm not jumping up and down for it. I think we said it before. It could have been a lot worse, but it should have been a lot better. I think I'll be okay with it. The costume, I think I'll be okay with it. It was like the New 52. There's that part of me, and Terrence has said it before on Everyone Loves a Drake. As much as they'll say this is going to be forever, nothing is ever forever. So at some point, I would not be surprised if Tim doesn't go back to being Robin again. So we'll have to wait and see, but I think I'm okay with it. I don't know if you're in that camp or not, but I've talked way too long here. What do you think about this section, and then any other, where do you fall with Tim at the moment?
I mean, like I had before, I love just the everything visually about this. That great initial fight scene between Tim and Drake, where they're just pretty much their silhouettes against the red background is just absolutely beautiful. There's the obvious pops of the yellow of their logos and their utility belts and their capes, but I love how even some of the shading occasionally has some green from their gloves and their shoulders.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just really, really creative, and I mean, you can tell that a lot of thought was put into it to make this look as good as possible. And even at times where you're maybe not sure who is who, it doesn't really matter, just because the fight is just so, I'll borrow this word, fluid, and
nice.
There you go. Just looks so great against that black against the red. And then I mean their conversation, I still think it's the weakest possible way that Tim could have come up with a new code name. So I mean, to answer your question, I don't necessarily dislike it any more than I did before, but I don't like it any more than I did before either. The only thing that makes me feel somewhat better about it is actually, to your point, I mean, nothing's going to last forever. This is not going to be a permanent change for Tim. So it's really more of I'm just going to count down the days until Drake becomes either Robin or Red Robin, or has a good code name and a good suit. But I mean, besides that, yeah, I mean, I other than, the ham-fisted, just Drake, that that is good, which makes no sense and is, pretty silly.
Right.
I do like their interaction otherwise. With what I really like, and we've talked about it before, is the fact that Tim is confident without being cocky. I don't like the fact that in Batman and Robin Eternal, Tynan said that Tim was, like the smartest Robin and kind of cocky and all that. It's like, no, that's really not Tim. I don't like that. I don't like that that's kind of how he was in his detective run either. So I like that Tim is confident in himself and his abilities, but he's not like overly cocky like Drake obviously is. He has a good head on his shoulders. He has self-control and wisdom to know when to react and when not to react, picking crappy code names from his evil doppelganger, notwithstanding. But I like how even though Drake kind of has Tim backed up against a wall physically, Tim still keeps calm under pressure and doesn't go too crazy like Drake obviously is. And then, of course, Bart comes in to save him. And I actually didn't notice this the first time, but on the page where Bart saves him at the very bottom, they're talking. And then for some reason, I thought it was just Drake like throwing something at Impulse or something. But no, it's Speed Zone comes in and just kind of pushes Bart off the page. That's kind of a fun little gag.
Yeah,
Go on.
I didn't pick that up until the read through again for tonight. I assumed that was Bart, but you can just make out Speed Zone. That was clever. When we first talked about it a couple months ago, I had no idea.
Yeah, I think maybe just that Gak didn't register that he was being pushed, so I thought that maybe for some reason Bart just ran off. Some of it may also have just been thinking the whole Drake thing is silly and then just wanting to move on beyond this. So I wasn't paying too much attention, but that's a fun little gag there. And yeah, those next 2 pages with the double page spreads with Tim throwing Drake into that convenience store, that is just an amazing pose. The composition of it is just fantastic. Like you said, the moon in the background, just the way Tim is posed there. There was kind of that one panel in that issue of Young Justice that we taught, the 98 Young Justice that we talked about, the most recent episode that we did, where it's like one of those shots that I always think of when I think of Tim Drake. This might become one of those as well. That's just a really, really iconic, awesome looking shot just to show his skill. And then I'm a sucker for kind of repeating a figure across the page to evoke like acrobatic movement. I love it when artists do that with Nightwing, especially. Kind of a, not so much shadowy, but kind of a duller, almost transparent looking figure, like moving across the page until you finally get the fully colored, just the main figure, winding up where they end up after the, quadruple somersault backflip or whatever he does or whatever. I like how Tim's stages that here with Tim jumping from the convenience store, doing some flips and kicking people in the face and then dodging bullets and then getting bigger and bigger as he comes toward the foreground until he's kind of becomes indisposed by being hit in the back of the head with a hammer. But it's still a really, really cool sequence, and I love the layout and the whole energy of it.
Oh, I love that too, and I liked how it's even framed as if these are their own little mini panels while still being set in a larger like splash page.
Yeah.
So I'm glad you pointed that out. This might be, aside from the superhero landing pose, as Terrence would say, with Tim throwing the Drake into the convenience store, this might be my favorite sequence just for the art itself of seeing the movement that Tim is doing.
Yeah, because definitely. As much as I loved the red background fight and the choreography of that, this is cool seeing how skilled Tim actually is, where he can take on multiple assailants at one time and still stay pretty much a step ahead of them until he's not, unfortunately. But yeah, I really, ever since reading this, whenever I would think back on this issue, this is the sequence that I would keep thinking of just because I liked it that much.
Same here. And then the end of the book, these last few pages, the Batwoman shows up, and this is the Stephanie Brown Batwoman that's in here, and this is the person that has been narrating the entire book for us that took a little longer to read. This might be my favorite's the wrong word. This might be the best part of dialogue in the whole book, is the exchange between Tim and this Earth 3 Stephanie, where Tim is trying to explain who he is, that he's not Drake. He says, I'm not Drake, but Tim trying to explain the connection between he and his Stephanie and how much he misses Stephanie and he wants to get back to their Earth. So I did really enjoy that until Bart comes over and knocks her out because, hey, the back of the head, because everybody on this Earth is bad. He's like, what did you do? And I like it that it doesn't matter, kind of like what you said in the beginning of the book with the whole doomsday clock and everything, that, Superman's the catalyst for everything. Almost the same could be said for Batman, that Tim, I'm drawing a very thin line here, but follow me on this, that Tim needs to get Stephanie or the Batwoman back to the Batcave. And Bart's like, what makes you think there's going to be a Batcave? And he says, oh, detective's hunch. Like, of course, there's going to be a Batcave. Good or bad, but surely there's going to be one for others. So I kind of like that too, that, on every Earth, just think, there could be a Batcave somewhere on our Earth. This issue ends with...
I'm just trying to... I'm dumbfounded because, oh my gosh, there could be, and I really hope there is.
Right?
I don't know what to say because that just fills me with so much joy.
Doesn't it? There's a Batmobile with our name literally could be on this Earth.
You're setting me up for disappointment. Please stop.
I know. Merry Christmas early.
Thank you.
The end of that's my gift for you this year, your own personal Batmobile. The end of the book, she shows the Drake back up and fully aware from having a chip shoved in his face with Hex, pointing a gun at Jenny Hex and wanting to know what is in the case, and is that trunk full of yours still full of goodies? And that trunk is mine, won a bet. So next, Teen Lantern's Secret Origin. So final thoughts for this issue. I think this issue looks better than it reads.
Yes, I agree. To talk about the final pages here, I actually like the fact that Stephanie is Batwoman on this Earth.
So do I.
And I don't mind that she's the one who is narrating it. Just like I said, I think it was saving that reveal for too long, and I had lost interest by the point that we found that we found it out. So it didn't land nearly as well as it probably should have. I still liked the interaction between Tim and this Stephanie, and yes, I love Bart's. Because everyone here is evil. Why wouldn't I knock her out? This is a world of bad guys.
Yeah, that's what we've been doing all night. I can just hear Bart.
Sorry, it's Stephanie, but not an evil one.
Right.
It's funny taken out of context. I like the sequence just fine, and I like their interaction together, Tim and this Stephanie. Just like I said, it was too little too late with it, and just the pacing of the whole issue was just completely off because of it. Like everybody else, I cannot wait to find out what is in Ginny's trunk, because that's kind of the red herring, or not the red herring, the MacGuffin that's kind of been making us interested in her, which I like the Ginny Hex character anyway, but that's what gives her that air of mystique. So I can't wait to find out what's in it
before we get to the next issue, and because they're looking for the multiverse map. So as I was reading this book, I'm like, do not tell me the multiverse map has been in her trunk the entire time. That's what I kept thinking. Why is she so protective of this? And even though the team has looked inside the trunk, there was that part of me that's like, all right, the team has seen what's inside of it. We don't know what's inside of it. So it can't be the map, because they've all taken a look at it and they would have said, hey, it's in your trunk. So I'm kind of curious if us, the reader, are we going to get to see what's inside this? You know, what's that big present underneath the Christmas tree? It better not be a pair of socks.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I'm sure you've read ahead with some of the solicits and everything that in a couple of months, all the Wonder Comics series are going to cross over. I wonder if whatever is in her trunk is kind of what sets off that crossover. Cause,
that's what I've been wondering, yeah.
Yeah, because, Wonder Twins and Dial H for Hero and Naomi and, all those books and Young Justice are going to kind of have their own little crossover there. So, I mean, if it's as big as they want us to believe it's going to be, then I could definitely see that being a big part of whatever's causing that story to kick off.
Yeah. Thanks for listening to Everyone Loves Young Justice podcast. We are part of the BatmanUniverse.net podcasting network.
If you would like to get a hold of us, you can do so a few different ways. We are on Twitter at ELYJ Podcast.
We are also on Facebook at www.facebook.com/ELYJpod.
You can email into the show at elyjpodcast@yahoo.com, and we will read your comments on the air.
If you listen to the show on iTunes, leave a review there. That will help spread the word of the show, and we will read your review as well.
Now, if your mode has been crashed,
or if you feel a bit whelmed by this show, no infringement was intended.
All music and sound clips belong to their respective copyright holders.
These are just to illustrate and enhance your listening experience.
No coinage is, was, or will be made by this show.
Our wives said so. All characters discussed on the show belong to DC Comics.
The opinions on this show belong to the two chatterboxes alone.
Not that anyone else does, but if you want your voice heard, let us know
why everyone loves Young Justice.